Scott made it. Hi, Scott. I think everybody was freaking out. Hadn't seen Scott and Cassie, but they made it. I never do that, come in at the last minute. I think I'm trying to stir up the lightning and get a storm here. I know, preacher. I'd like to welcome all of you to the class this morning. Randy came up and shook my hand. He said he just wanted to shake hands with the teacher. I said, you've been waiting to do that for quite a while, haven't you? But I thanked Randy I thought he did a good job studying that first chapter of John. Never again will y'all complain about me not covering very many verses. But I thought we had a real good study. He just used that first chapter of John to go into a lot of different things. We're going to go back to Proverbs for a while. We're going to be in chapter 24 this morning. It's where we left off the last time I was a substitute. And I'm not going to make a bold prediction that in the next 13 weeks we'll finish Proverbs. But if we do, I got to think of what I can get ready for the next time I have to substitute when somebody's out of town. Brother Eddie Cooper's going to open our class with prayer, then we'll get started. Brother Eddie?
Father, Lord in heaven, we again are thankful for the beauties of this day, for all the creation that we're made aware of your great handiwork, and for all the things that are provided for us each day. May we never, ever take them for granted. We're thankful for the church here. We're thankful for this good work. Pray for Rick as he teaches a class this morning that we might be attentive to those things that we study together. Help us to realize the importance of being students of your word. Be with those who are ill especially. Be with our country during this difficult time. Be with those in the Ukraine especially who are Christians who are dealing with persecution. Forgive us our wrongs. Be with us as we journey through life. That we might always be faithful. It's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah. Thanks, Brother Eddie. 15th verse is where we're going to start this morning. Proverbs 24, verse 15. Proverbs is a book, in my opinion, unlike most of the others, in that there's just so many lessons packaged together, but they kind of stand alone. So, it'd be kind of weird to come in here and say, oh, well, we're going to start at the 24th chapter, verse 15, in any other book, and it makes sense. And the section of Proverbs that we're in now, as I mentioned before, is a little different than the first section we went through, because instead of having a standalone verse that's a proverb that you can spend time talking about, in this particular section, and this is the last chapter of that section, the Proverbs are packaged together in multi-verse packages. And so instead of looking at one at a time, we look at two or three or even four at a time. And I think we finished the chapter with 5 verses together that make up the thought that Solomon is trying to get across here. But we're going to look at 15 and 16 to start with this morning. I'll just go ahead and read those two. Lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. The first verse there, verse 15. Well, first off, let me read to you what Kaufman said about these two verses, because I kind of think it sets the stage. What he said was, this warning is pointed squarely at the wicked, stressing the fact that God himself blesses, preserves, and protects his true followers. Christ himself promised to be with his followers even unto the end of the world, as we see in Matthew 28, 18 through 20. And in spite of the fact that this is not a blanket exemption from the trials and misfortunes of life, what is stated here is a true and faithful promise of God's eternal preference for the righteous. Okay, so most of what we've studied in Proverbs so far have been admonitions to really everybody. And in particular, Solomon's advice to his son and giving him things he needs to live the life that he needs to live and to be faithful to God. But these two verses in particular are really directed at the wicked, and I think we can probably say most of the wicked don't read them. Wouldn't you say that? Okay. But it does at least let us know how God feels about the wicked, and that he's got instruction for them too if they would only heed it. One of the prayers that we make almost every time somebody here prays is we ask God to be with our leaders, that they would look to him for guidance. Now, do they? Not very often, I don't think. That's my opinion. And with several of you doing like this, you agree with me. But we can still keep praying that they will pick up his book, especially when they're having a hard time, as well. Let's see what God has to say about it. We have had leaders in our country over the years who did that very thing. But I don't see quite as much of that anymore, and it's sad. But we should keep praying for them. So anyway, especially the first verse there, 15, lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous, spoil not his resting place. What he's talking about here is don't what do we call that? Don't case out the house, okay? You don't make plots against this righteous man to despoil or to rob him or to do damage to him. And the theme here is because God's looking out for him. Now, Kaufman, I think, goes ahead and makes a good point that this doesn't mean that the righteous are never going to have a problem. They're never going to stub their toe. They're never going to have things go bad. They're never going to get that electric bill that's $100 or $200 more on the month than they thought it was going to be. I see some of you nodding your head on that one too, okay? Those things are going to happen to us. God set this universe into motion, and in doing so, the way it operates, we have described through laws of physics and things. I mean, there's man's explanation of what God has done, but he set it in motion, and it keeps going. And our lives are set in motion, and sometimes the laws of nature catch up with us, especially those of us who are aging. I was setting out my weekly pills this morning, and I just shook my head, okay? And we had a box about yay that those snack crackers came in, the peanut butter and cheese crackers and stuff. All my medicines fill up that whole box. And, a lot of times we like to rationalize. I say, well, I got 3 bottles of that same medicine. It's one of the reasons it's full. But still, you think, when I was a kid, I never took any medicine. My brother-in-law, bless his soul, takes 2 pills a day. He takes a multivitamin. And I think he may be taking a low-dose aspirin to help, ward off heart attacks and things. Is that what you're doing, Randy?
That ain't me.
That's not you? But those are physical laws that God set up. And as we age, our bodies aren't what they were when we were 20. And medicine has kept up with a lot of it and helps prolong our lives. The average life, I think when Jesus was on the earth, the average lifespan was about 35. Today it's 75? Somewhere thereabouts. And a lot of that is through better nutrition. A lot of that is through better water, better drinking water. I studied a lot of that in college, and in one of my textbooks there was a sign, probably in the 20s or the 30s, the 1920s, 1930s, and there was a sign as you went into this one town that said, the water supply in this town has been deemed safe by the such and such Department of Health. Y'all ever see a sign like that anymore? I mean, we take pure water for granted, don't we? So a lot of that, and medicines have helped prolong the human's life in this century, in the past century, and the average lifespan has increased tremendously. But we still get old, and we still age, and we have the infirmities of life. And being a faithful Christian doesn't take those away. It's going to happen to most of us. Some of them walk by and they're 70 and you think they're 50 and they act like they're 30. But that's not most of us. So those temporary setbacks are going to affect us as faithful Christians. But in the long run, God's looking out for us. The commands he gives us are for our own good. We should never hit a bridge abutment at 120 miles an hour, should we? And die. That shouldn't happen to us, should it? Why? Because we don't drive 120 miles an hour, right? Let me put it this way. We shouldn't be driving at 120 miles an hour. Okay, and so if we live as God directs us to live, we're going to escape a lot of the problems that people have. Okay? Addiction to cocaine. None of us should have to worry about being addicted to cocaine. Now, we might have to be worried about being addicted to prescription painkillers that were prescribed for pain we were having due to surgery or some other kind of problem. We need to be careful with that, because I know people who have become addicted to legal drugs that they took for a prescribed benefit. But cocaine, crystal meth, should any of us drop dead from taking that? No, because God tells us not to abuse our bodies. So, the point is that God looks after us, and throughout the Scriptures, he lets it be known that the wicked ought to leave the righteous alone, because God will avenge them. He tells us not to, and later on in this chapter we'll talk a little bit about that. Not even not taking vengeance, but not even wishing it on other people. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what's this talking about in verse 15 is, don't plot against, people's property, their homes, or their physical well-being, talking to the wicked. Don't do that. Leave people alone. And, of course, this is an admonition to us, too. The righteous shouldn't be doing this, looking at how they can take things from people wrongfully. Verse 16 is kind of interesting. It says, "For a just man falleth 7 times." The word 7 it's a number, okay, but it's used quite often in the Scriptures, and a lot of times it's used to mean completeness. Okay, so we could look at this as a literal 7, or we could look at it that, just men aren't perfect. There was only one perfect man to live on this earth. And I'll use the word man in a general sense. Okay, there's only one perfect person to ever live on this earth, and that was Jesus Christ. Okay, the rest of them have made mistakes. They've sinned. Now, when a just man falls, what does he do? He repents, gets back up, and goes on doing the best he can. All right? And so this 7 can mean this many. I'll figure it out here in a minute. I'll get enough of them up. This many, it could mean 7 actual times, or it could just mean, a lot of times. But the key is, what's that? Oh, yeah. But the key is, every time he falls, he gets back up. He doesn't let him lead him into a life of sin. Okay? He repents, asks God to forgive him, and goes on trying to live the Christian life. That's true. We're not perfect. But the last part of this verse says that the wicked fall into mischief. How many times does a person who isn't a righteous person, isn't a just person, has something bad go wrong and it just pushes them off into the wrong direction. Their idea is not to get through that problem and get back to doing the right thing. It's just an excuse then for them, you know, suppose they had $100 in their pocket and they lost it. I won't say the amount, but has that ever happened to you? You had some money in your pocket and, you know, you pulled out your keys and the money came out with it and you didn't notice it. And when you went back, you realized it was somebody's lucky day. Not yours. It was somebody else's lucky day. Well, then does that justify you going and stealing that $100 from somebody else? Of course not. Okay, but some people, they do that. And so here we have a situation where both people stumble and fall, but the righteous man gets up and keeps on going. The wicked man lets that be an excuse to go into more wickedness. And Solomon's saying, don't do it. Get ready.
You know, really, as Christians, we have an advantage because we have introspection. We have a frame of reference, God's Word. So when we do fall, our hearts are right. We'll do the hearty commandment, repent, and we'll rise back up. We'll
Right.
learn from our mistakes. But the wicked, they don't have that. They lack introspection, capacity to look within, because they don't have that frame of reference. So we have a distinct advantage. And many times when the wicked, when they fall into mystery, when they set that course, and they keep making serious mistakes.
And a lot of times it's the same mistake.
But they don't look within and say, what was my part in that? What was my role? And they say, wow, what just happened? And I'm afraid we have that on a mass scale. And people, you know, things get really bad, people they're not going to be able to look within and say, I didn't see that coming. They won't know what to do. But I think in that event, we have an advantage.
Okay, if you didn't hear that in the back of the room, Randy said that as Christians we have an advantage because we have a frame of reference. And so if something happens to us, we've got something to judge it against. And the wicked do not have that. And so a lot of times when a wicked person or a person, let me just say it, you know, this way, a person who doesn't trust in God, okay, to guide his steps. And through that, of course, we're talking about the, you know, from the Bible. But when something like bad happens to them, a lot of the times, who do they blame? God, mankind, the government. It's easy to pick on the government. I even think they're not doing things right a lot of times. But they blame someone else. And so many times, not always, but so many times, the problems that we have are our own fault. How many times have we made the same mistake? And we didn't learn from the first and second time that we made that mistake. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about a sin. I'm just talking, you know, like an error in judgment. You know, all errors in judgment are not necessarily a sin. Okay? We make mistakes, especially financially. Now, hopefully, as we age, we do better because we don't make as many foolish decisions concerning finances. But when we were younger, how many times did we go out and buy that new car when we really couldn't afford it and the old one was still doing okay, but you know, it lost that new car smell. If I could ever package that smell into an aerosol can, I could get rich. So don't buy a new car, just spray this inside your car and it'll do for a year or something. But how many, you know, if I look back on some of my financial decisions, cars probably were one of the big ones. Now some of them, it's because I wrecked and I had to get a new car. But other times, you know, I just wanted a new car, want a new truck. And a lot of times you use the 4-letter word, need. I need a truck. Before I owned my first truck, I told Anna, I need a truck. And I won't ask for a show of hands of any of y'all that ever did that. But, you know, that wasn't a sin necessarily to buy a new truck, but it might have been a not wise financial decision. Who's the fellow? Dave Ramsey? Is that the guy that has Financial Peace? Okay. You know, one of the first things he tells these young people who are head over heels, I'll figure that out in a minute, head over heels in debt is get rid of that car you're paying $500 a month for, buy you a junker and drive it for 2 years. Start paying off these debts. He makes a lot of sense if you listen to him. Cut up the plastic. And you know, our society makes it so easy, especially on young people. You know, no credit check needed here, get this credit card. You max that thing out. And as someone wise person told me this morning, with respect to weight, it's a whole lot easier to put it on than it is to take it off. Okay, well, debt's the same way. Debt is a whole lot easier to put on than it is to take off. And those are mistakes of judgment. They're not necessarily sins. Sometimes they could be sins, but most of the times they're just errors in judgment. But we have to learn from those mistakes.
Could that be a worldly pleasure?
It could be. It could be. Could very well be. Okay, so the just man falls but gets up. And it doesn't say this, but I think it implies it. And repents, prays God for forgiveness, and then goes on and does the best he can. Wicked man allows it to lead him into more problems. And doesn't it just, you know, when you behave the way the wicked man behaves, doesn't it just lead to more problems? How many times have you seen a person tell a lie and then have to tell another lie to try to get out of the first lie? And then have to tell a third lie to get out of the second lie that tried to get you out of the first lie. It's ridiculous. Is it hard sometimes to be honest? Sure it is. You know, especially when your wife comes home with a new hairdo and says, "Hey, you like my hairdo?" I'm honest, right, Anna? Most of the times what I say is, I like the old way better. Now, she paid me a compliment one time. She told me I need a haircut. She does this a lot. I need one now. But anyway, she tells me I need a haircut. So she told me, she said, "Are you going to get your haircut today?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll stop by after work and I'll get my haircut." Well, I stopped by my regular barber after work, and he also took appointments, and he was booked up till the end of the day. He says, "Now, I can take you at 9 o'clock in the morning," and it happened to be that I didn't have any classes, so I could stop in and get my haircut at 9. I said, "Okay, put me down for 9 o'clock in the morning." So I went home and came in the front door, and Anna hollered. First thing she hollered at me, other than, "Hi, honey, I'm glad you're home." She said, "Did you get your hair? Did you stop by the barber?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "Come here, I want to look at you." She looked at me. She said, "That's the best job he's ever done." I said, "I'll tell him that in the morning when I get my hair cut at 9 o'clock. And I think what she was doing is kind of like what I did. She liked the old way better, right? And I come back from the barber, and I just looked the same. And a lot of times you come back to the barber, you look like it was a Sioux Indian that got hold of you. And the old joke is, you know what the difference between a good haircut and a bad haircut is? 2 weeks. So, anyway. Any comments on 15 and 16? All right, the next two verses go together, 17 and 18, so let's read those together. "Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him." I guess in one way of interpreting that verse is if you laugh at another person's misfortune, be careful, even though he might deserve it, the Lord might just take that away from him because of what you're doing. That may be a stretch, I'm not sure. But doesn't these two verses lead us into Matthew chapter 5, verses 44 through 48, where he says, "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." And we'll use these verses and some others later on in chapter 24. Now, how hard is it to love your enemies? Tough, isn't it? When somebody does you a disservice, does you an injury, it's tough to forgive them. It really is. And it's also tough if we go back then to verse 17 here in Proverbs 24, where it's hard not to rejoice when he stumbles or when he falls. Okay? But, you know, I know this is hard advice to give. It's hard advice to take. But let me show you some of God's wisdom in this. Suppose somebody does you a disservice, and you lay awake at night dwelling on that and just grinding your teeth over that so-and-so who treated you that way. And, you know, I hope all four tires go flat. You know, one's bad enough, but all four. You don't have that many spares in the trunk. Whose sleep is being disturbed by those kind of thoughts? Your enemies or yours? Yeah, your enemies sleeping soundly.
They're probably sleeping fine.
They're sleeping fine. You're the one that's staying awake, injuring your health, grinding your teeth that you just paid $2,000 to the dentist to get a new crown or something. Grinding your teeth. They're sleeping like a baby. Their conscience doesn't bother them, or else they wouldn't be out hurting people and doing people a disservice. Only bothers you. Only gives you an ulcer. Okay, God looks out for us, and one of the ways he looks out for us is he teaches us things that will help us. Okay? And forgiving your enemy helps you a whole lot more than it helps your enemy. Okay, because, you know, for the most part, are any of us going to take any action against our enemy? No. All we're going to do is stew about it. And, well, now, you know, if the person steals from you, is it okay as a Christian to turn them over to the police? Sure it is. You know, did Paul appeal to the authorities when he needed to? Remember when he was about to be beaten? And he says, is it lawful for you to beat a Roman who's not being condemned by a court of law? I mean, I'm adding words there, but that's basically what he said. What was he doing? He was appealing to Roman law. Okay, what happened when they wouldn't let him go in Jerusalem? You know, when the ruling governor just kept him in. I don't know if he had him in jail or not, but he was not free to leave. He appealed to Caesar. So what's he doing? He's appealing to Roman law. As a Roman citizen, he had rights. Nothing wrong with availing yourself of those rights. Okay? But you don't want to do something wrong to avenge yourself against somebody who wronged you. Because then that puts you in jeopardy with the laws of the land, but also puts you in jeopardy with God. And love your enemies. Remember about Jesus saying, give them the cold cup of water you know, and in doing so, you'll heap coals of fire on their head. Some of us think that's literal. Just dump another bucket full of coals on top of him. He deserves it. You know, the idea is that hopefully that'll cause him to repent. Doesn't always work, but it does sometimes.
The Lord said, vengeance is mine, I will repay.
I will repay, saith the Lord. Yes, he said that. So, and you know, let me tell you the difference. One of the differences between God's vengeance and our vengeance. If we strike back at somebody we think's done us wrong, and people have done that over the years, have they ever made a mistake? Have they ever punished the wrong person? Has society ever hung the wrong person? I just saw a headline yesterday or day before yesterday that somebody who was, I'm thinking in his 50s. I don't know, it might have been he or she. I'm guessing it was a he. Was in his 50s, and he was just exonerated of a crime that he was convicted of when he was 17 and had been in jail ever since. That happens. It does happen. What was that fella's name? Zane? Was that the guy's name that was a chemist for the state police that was falsifying lab results in criminal trials and sending people to jail, to prison, based on that evidence? And somebody was finally exonerated by some DNA testing or something, and they were able to track down that Zane had done a lot of that. Okay? So sometimes it's on purpose, and sometimes it's just mistakes that people make.
Rick, you know, someone treats us bad, or we learn they've stumbled along the way, or they've gotten what they deserve, and there's rejoice in that matter.
Uh-huh.
I mean, sometimes it's hard for us to reconcile, but God loves them as well.
He does.
He loves men's souls. That doesn't excuse the conduct.
Mm-hmm.
We need to try to understand that God loves them as He loves all.
Yeah.
That's for the,
Randy pointed out that God loves even the sinner.
for the vengeance of the Lord.
And, well, his vengeance is perfect. Okay? He doesn't make mistakes. So if he punishes someone, they deserved it. If we punish someone, they might not deserve it. My dad whipped me one time. I've told you all about this before. He whipped me one time, and I was innocent. Now, Scott claims innocence all the time when he was a young person. And I wasn't always innocent. I will admit that. I was in this one instance. My brother had gotten into some meanness, and Dad caught him at it. My older brother and I shared a bedroom, and Dad came in when he found out about it and took a belt and was walloping my brother. And after he decided that my brother had had enough, he started walloping me. And those things, what'd you hit me for? I didn't do anything. And it was true. I was not involved in that episode. And he hit me about 3 times, and my brother Rod went to my defense. He said, Dad, Rick's telling you the truth. He was not involved. Well, rather than saying he was sorry, my dad looked at me and said, you probably deserved that for something I didn't catch you at. And the sad thing was he was right. But see, my dad made a mistake. My dad was a good man. I treasured him, except when he was beating on me. But and most of the times I did deserve it. But he made a mistake, honest mistake, because my older brother and I ran together. The 3 younger boys in our family ran together. My sister was the dividing line in that group, and so generally when my older brother and I, one of them got in trouble, the other one was involved too. That was generally the case. This time it wasn't. Dad made a mistake. He's a good man, good Christian, but he made a mistake. And we can do that. And so that's why we shouldn't be trying to exact vengeance, because we might not understand the whole story. We might get it wrong. I was spanked a few times in school back when they allowed that sort of thing. And one time I was spanked, and it wasn't me. So a teacher made a mistake and actually let the person that was involved, who attended these services here, we were in I can't remember why, we were in the school cafeteria, kind of like for a study hall, but it wasn't a scheduled study hall. I don't know, something was going on with our room or something, so they moved us all to the school cafeteria. And the young man that was involved, who was a personal friend of mine, was sitting beside me, and he was playing footsies with a girl on the other side of the table. Well, you know, in junior high school, there wasn't a whole lot of romance going on, so it was, you know, kind of you punch me, I punch you back type of thing. And so she hauled off and swung her foot. You know what happened, right, Steve? And missed him and hit me. And I wasn't involved to the point that I wasn't even hardly paying attention to what was going on until her foot contacted my shin, and I yelped. So it was kind of like pain and surprise. Teacher come over and leaned down over my ear and says, "You're going to get it in the morning." So I told my buddy, I said, "Oh, we're in trouble. We're going to get it in the morning." So in homeroom, she was our homeroom teacher. Homeroom, I walked up, he walked up with me. And she came out with us 4-foot-long paddle, okay? And she looked at my friend and said, "What are you doing up here?" Sent him back to his desk and walloped me. Okay, so she made a mistake. I made a mistake sitting by my friend because he was involved in a lot of things like that. But she made a mistake. So humans make mistakes. Even when they're well-meaning, they make mistakes. And that's why, you know, it's one thing to turn someone into the law if they've wronged you, they stole your car, which that happened to us. It actually happened to Anna's mother. Somebody stole her car, and we turned it over to the police, and the police took care of it. And the person was caught red-handed in the car. And if memory serves me correctly, she's still in prison. We get a notice every time she comes up for parole if we want to come and testify. But we handed it to the law and let the law deal with it, okay, rather than catch her out some night and thump her real good. I would do that to a girl anyway, but, you know. So, yes, we can avail ourselves of legal remedies, but don't take it on your own hands, in your own hands, because we're not perfect and we can make mistakes. God won't. If somebody stands in judgment and gets assigned to the goats, they deserve to be assigned to the goats.
The biggest thing about that is that it hurts a good person's heart.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
it does more damage to the inside of a person,
Yep.
the mind
yeah,
of a person than it could ever harm.
yeah. And God knows that, and so he tells us that for our own good, right? He tells us for our own good. Okay, so don't even rejoice when your enemy falls. And that's hard not to do. Let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. Because most of the times when people who do wrong, they stumble and they get caught. Very, very seldom do they make it through life without getting caught. And so, let us not try to participate in the vengeance. Any comments now through verse 18?
The Lord sees it all. We don't know.
Well, isn't that exactly right? The Lord sees all. And can we look into a person's heart and discern their thoughts like Jesus was able to do? We can't do that, can we? We can judge their actions, but even sometimes we make mistakes in judging their actions. Verse 19, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man, the candle of the wicked shall be put out. We ran across one of those phrases before in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 9. Now, the whole verse says, the light of the righteous rejoiceth, but the lamp of the wicked shall be put out. So the lamp of the wicked, or the candle of the wicked, shall be put out. It's almost word for word the same between these two proverbs. Okay? So, we've been told before not to be envious of evil people. Don't be envious of their apparent success. Don't be envious of what they have. You know, if we're envious of what we have, aren't we putting our values in the wrong area anyway? You know, we're becoming materialistic, and somebody has more than us, and so we're envious. Well, we're told not to do that. And, you know, these words were penned, I'm going to guess, about somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 years ago, and they're still appropriate today. I mean, they fit right in today's society. Job 15:31 says, let not him that is deceived trust in vanity, for vanity shall be his recompense. And so, you know, Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes talks a lot about vanity. If that's what you trust in, that will be your reward. And what is vanity? Is it worth having? No. No. And so if you spend your life pursuing vanity, and you end up with a reward of vanity, you've wasted your life. And that's what Solomon's saying here. Okay, verse 20 said, is in answer to verse 19, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious of the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. Anything he gains through evil on this world isn't important. His final reward will be damnation. So why envy that? You know, why envy his better car or his bigger house?
Look at the rich man and Lazarus.
Perfect example.
Yeah, rich man, you know, he had all. What's the Bible say? You know, in your lifetime you had many things.
Many good things.
Many good things. But look where he's at now. But now he was in torment. And Lazarus is.
And do you think he would be willing to trade at that point?
Sure he would.
Sure he would have. Because how long do you live on this earth? There's no one in this room today that's 100 years old. Unless they're hiding it well. Some of us are pushing it. I remember one time my Aunt Tootie, David's mom, told Pam Meadows, I think at the time, but she was pushing 30. I think she was 21 at the time. Said something about pushing 30, and Pam says, oh, I'm not pushing 30. And Tootie says, well, you're not pushing 20. Yeah, Tootie was a kind of a philosopher in her own right. It says, you're not pushing 20. So I'm not real close to 100, but I'm pushing it, you know. I'm not pushing 70 anymore.
If you're old as you feel, I'm there.
Sometimes I feel that way too. Okay, is that the first bell, second bell? I see two fingers being held up back there. Now I see two, okay. All right, so where did we get to? I will say that we will start on verse 21, which will be next month, right? Got the third, does that sound about right? Third. Be 9/3/22. Well, thanks for your comments and your kind attention.